Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing for you guys the Nike Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite FG or Zoom Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite FG. In this review, I will discuss the pros of the football boot, the cons, and also give my final thoughts on the boots as a whole based on my own experiences. I will also provide you guys with some recommendations on boots you can consider if you want something similar or maybe want something else that's completely different to this, but you don't rock with Nike or have any reservations about choosing them or anything like that. Before we get into this video, if you guys do enjoy it and want to see more content or have liked any of my other videos in the past, then definitely make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe, and also use the hype button to help push my content out to more prospective viewers, subscribers, and the like, as it would really help, especially given that I'm a small creator in terms of boosting my status within the algorithm. Additionally, I am doing a 1,000 subscribers special video. It's going to be a Q&A. We are 40 subscribers off at the time of recording this. So, I hope we'll hit it by the time this video goes up because I have a few other videos coming before this. But if you have any questions, do make sure to drop those questions in the comment section of this video. And also use the comment section of the community post that will likely be up before this video comes out anyways to drop your questions that I will be answering in that Q&A. And without further ado, let's get into this review. Kicking off the pros would be the actual comfort of the Mercurial Vapor 16. It is actually the most comfortable Mercurial that I have ever worn, and for multiple different reasons. For one, the upper, which is made of knit, of course, wraps your foot like a nice warm sock. It's what's expected from a knit upper, especially made by Nike these days, as they are one of the best in the business when it comes to that kind of upper. Next, you have the actual Air Zoom unit, which again, that's more of a sole play thing, but it is so comfortable underfoot, especially once you've broken it in. It provides a really nice cushion effect with every step, which makes you feel as though you're not running on a hard sole plate, but you're actually running on something with a lot of foam, kind of akin to like a max cushion daily trainer, not completely, but you get some semblance of it while still retaining the responsiveness that you would want from a football boot. In general, it's just extremely comfortable in that regard. And of course, there's the shaping. Now, the Mercurial is still on the narrower side, is to be expected with the Mercurial, but it is so accommodating now, especially compared to Mercurials of old. This one, I have wide feet / flat feet, kind of a bit of both. So I'd say I'm on the semi-wide to wide aspect when it comes to feet. But given the Air Zoom unit underneath, the fact that the last of the football boot isn't as narrow as it used to be, and the fact that this upper is knit means that it stretches and molds to the foot extremely well, especially in that kind of lateral / medial area of the midfoot that is the widest for me and probably the widest for most other people. It is extremely comfortable in that regard. And as such, for me, this is definitely the most comfortable speed boot I have ever worn, without a doubt. The next pro of this football boot would be lockdown and responsiveness. And I want to kind of put these two together because they do work hand in hand. When it comes to actual lockdown, of course, you have the dual lace hole setup that you get from the laces, which provides a lot of coverage across the top of the foot and does a very good job of locking you in when the pull the lace is tight. You also have a really narrow heel opening so that it hugs the heel very well, and as such helps the boots to move with you rather than your foot moving the boots when you play. Of course, grip knit, atom knit, and fly knit, while they are still like a sock-like comfortable wrap, they still provide a tight fit. Wow, that was weird. They provide a tight fit, which definitely hugs the foot very closely, and as such aids in that kind of creation of lockdown. It's not like the Vapor 15 lockdown, which that was more cage-like. This is more of like a very nice like wrap, like tension, if that makes sense. And that's something that contributes very good to lockdown and responsiveness because, of course, the boots move with you. When it comes to the outsole, of course, this outsole, at least the frame or the chassis, as I like to call it, super snappy, especially in the forefoot. Probably one of the snappiest forefoots I've ever experienced. And of course, the midfoot is still pretty stiff. It's not as stiff as on Vapor 15, which I will talk a bit more about when we get into the cons area, but it still has that midfoot stiffness that you would need from a very snappy outsole. And as such, when everything works together, it is so responsive underfoot. And of course, with the stud pattern, as you guys can see, one of the most aggressive bladed stud patterns that you can get on the market right now. I think only maybe Puma Ultra and New Balance with their Furon Elite V8 have a more aggressive stud pattern with the true chevron studs across the entire sole plate. But this provides a ton of traction, bite, and grip whenever you dig into the ground, both on artificial ground and firm ground, which is this is designed for. And as such, just the level of responsiveness and lockdown you get from this, or I guess backwards, the level of lockdown and subsequent responsiveness you get from this football boot when you change direction, sprint, cut, whatever it is, it's absolutely unreal. It's remarkable, magnificent, and I absolutely love it. Another major pro of this football boot would actually be the durability. And you'll probably see it more with the B-roll I put up on screen to kind of aid with what I'm talking about. But this boot, I've had it for a year and a bit. This is the electric colorway, of course. So it came out around August of 2024 for the Olympic Games, I believe. And it's held up pretty perfectly, if I'm honest. The only real things I've noticed are, fading of the grip knit and stainage, because of course grip knit has a proclivity to stain retention. Of course, stud dulling from just using them, it's bound to happen. And of course, with this colorway in particular, the chrome on the sole plate wore away. But that's to be expected. That's what happens with chrome sole plates anyways. So those are very minute durability issues. Apart from that, there have been no catastrophic failures in the glue or the seams, no crazy fraying on the sock liner or the heel area. Insole is still intact. Air zoom unit is still intact. No cracking on the sole plate. The boots have held up extremely well. And I know I have a lot of boots, so I'm able to rotate a lot more frequently. But even still at that, I have other boots in my collection that I do use less than this, and they have broken on me. So I think that just goes to show just how good the build quality on the Vapor 16 Elite really is. Jumping into some miscellaneous pros here as well, I just want to touch on the looks. With this colorway in particular, I know it's a special edition colorway, so it looks especially good, especially with the Safari decal that you have going on here. But just in general, I love the silhouette on the Vapor 16. I think that's one of the reasons why so many people love to buy it, because it just looks so good, especially with the return of the side swoosh. It's magisterial the way these look. And when they do make a really creative design, like for example with the cosmic speeds, the electrics, the chromatics, I'm trying to think of some other colorways, the Fear Nothing colorway, the Vinny Juniors, there's just so much to love about the way the boots look. The silhouette itself looks fast, it looks responsive, it looks mean, it looks so speed focused, and that's exactly what you want from a speed boot. You want it to convey that level of there's levels to this, when it comes to pace. I'm that guy when I have these boots on. That's the look that these boots give. And then also, I didn't really touch on the upper specifically, because as a speed boot, it does what every speed boot upper is or does. There's just so much more to highlight about this football boot than the upper. It's a knit upper. It molds to your foot very well. It's thin, barefoot feeling, has incredible grip. We all know how grip knit works at this point. So I really didn't think there'd be any point of, delving too much into the upper, because it's a good upper. And I think I've touched on that and kind of explained that from the different ways I highlighted how the upper is important in those other pros, like lockdown, responsiveness, and the overall comfort. So yeah, as an overall package, the Nike Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite is something that I would consider perfect, at least for me. A lot of other people may not see it that way, but it is just so good as a football boot and is definitely one of my absolute favorites to use right now at the moment. Now, segueing off of what I just said about the Vapor 16 being perfect, I do really think that this boot has minimal flaws. However, for the sake of objectivity, I had to really, look for cons. And I guess there are a few that can be mentioned. So the first one I want to talk about is the slight drop in responsiveness from this football boot. Now, this refers to the previous generation Vapor 15. I actually have it in hand with me right now. So if I switch to the right boot so you guys can see, the right representation of both football boots. Here on my left hand, I have the Vapor 15, and my right, I have the Vapor 16. Now, Vapor 16 is still very responsive. It moves with the foot the way you would want it to, and it has a lot of lockdown. However, for the very nature of the materials used to construct the Vapor 15 versus Vapor 16, Vapor 15 is and will always be a more responsive football boot, whether it is brand new or it is broken in. And that is because Vapor 15, I almost confused the two. Vapor 15 uses something called Vapor Posit Plus. It was a 5-layer composite textile synthetic, whereas this Vapor 16 uses an amalgamation of Flyknit, Gripknit, and Atomknit. Keyword knit. Knit has a better proclivity to stretch and mold. So that's why it molds to the foot a lot better than Vapor Posit Plus. However, with the structure that Vapor Posit Plus has, it provides a more caged in feeling, which makes it feel more responsive and it's more visceral and doesn't feel as sock like or as, I guess, connected to you. It feels like you actually have to move it and or move it, and when you do that, you it feels more responsive. It's a I don't know. I'm not really explaining it well, but you definitely feel it a lot more moving in these boots than you do with these. And I guess that's because of the level of give that you get from the knit material here versus the textile synthetic here. Additionally, when you move to the sole plates, it's very slight, and I mean marginal, how much different the level of responsiveness is. But this is just slightly, and I mean so slightly less responsive than this. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's the way that the spine is constructed through the midfoot on the Vapor 16 versus what you get on the Vapor 15. But this just feels a tad bit more stable and springy underfoot than this. Realistically, you're not going to notice it, but I have played with both boots on at the same time to test this out just to be absolutely sure. And that's something that I did notice. So the fact of the matter is, Vapor 15 is just that little bit more responsive than Vapor 16. But again, it's just such a minuscule difference. And honestly, it would come down to personal preference because if you're someone who wants something that's more sock like, has a bit more give when you move, or someone who wants something that moves with your foot, is very structured and harder to like kind of buckle under pressure, I guess, then you may prefer this, but you may also prefer this, which is why, again, it's like pulling at straws here, pulling at hairs, but it is still a con at the end of the day. The next con to mention would be grip knit. Now, grip knit is a con for two reasons. Number one, the learning curve. As we all know, grip knit is a waxy material. So when you take a touch on the ball and you're trying to dribble or control it, what could happen is that the ball would get stuck on your foot, causing you to trip or mess up whatever, dribble you're going for or skill move. And obviously, with all things, there is a learning curve. The learning curve can be, dealt with by just training in the boots. But for many people, they could find it annoying. And especially if you're a purist who wants something that's completely no nonsense, barefoot upper, barefoot touch, pingy raw, and just when you dribble, it just slides off your foot, then this would not be for you. And it makes sense. But again, it's a personal preference thing. And with that learning curve, it can be a little daunting and a little annoying for newer players, especially if you haven't used a boot that has grip elements before, like maybe a Predator or, the Phantom 6 or Phantom GX or whatnot. Additionally, there is the issue of cleaning grip knit. And I mean, it's again such a like minute con because I mean, whatever. A lot of people don't even clean their boots anyways. But you will see in the B-roll, these boots, these are cleaned and you can still see grass stains, mud stains. And I have really put like a lot of time, effort, and grit into cleaning these boots to look the way that they are right now. And they still look pretty dirty. Like you can tell that they're used. You wouldn't experience the same thing with like Vapor 15, for example, like I just talked about, because those, they don't hold dirt as well as what grip knit does thanks to its waxy texture, although that is kind of dependent on the colorway. For example, if you had like the Ready Pack colorway of the Mercurial Vapor 15, then that might still show the dirt because it's an all white colorway and it wouldn't be necessarily cleaned. Again, with this one, it's a gray knit upper or grayish knit upper, so it makes sense that you do see a bit more stainage. But even across my other colorways, because I have two other colorways of the Vapor 16, both in HE, you can still see the stains and the dirt there. So those are just some annoying aspects of grip knit. I still think it's a great material, but those are things that have to be knocked as cons because they do kind of, I guess, affect the overall playing and ownership experience of the Vapor 16 Elite. The final con would be the stud pattern. Now, as I mentioned, this is the FG variation, and when I showed you guys the stud pattern before, it is extremely aggressive. You get bladed studs, chevrons, and of course speed fins through the air zoom unit window to kind of give you maximal traction in forward directions. However, let's be completely honest, and I know this is kind of again splitting hairs, but most people who buy FG football boots don't only use them on firm ground, they also use them on turf or artificial ground. And as such, if you're looking for a boot that's versatile, this is definitely not it. Like the studs are way too long, they're also way too aggressive, and will give you way too much traction on artificial grass if you were to play with them over there. I do it because I really don't care that much. I'm also in training, so I can limit how hard I'm going. But if you're wearing these in a match, for example, and you have to do a hard cut, or you get tackled with your foot stuck in the ground, and you have to twist or twist to kind of give way to break that traction, the risk of injury to you is so much higher with this firm ground stud pattern than with any other stud pattern you can get on the market pretty much. And as such, that's why, given the level of versatility that's required by a lot of players these days, especially with the move to, invest in more artificial ground pitches worldwide, this stud pattern needs to be knocked because it's just not versatile at all. And of course, I do understand that Nike does offer their artificial ground variation. This is my, what pack is this? Mad Energy pack. And of course, as you guys can see, you do get the conical studs on this one. They're all hollowed out. And that's the AG variation to compare to the FG variation. It's very true that Nike does offer this, and that can easily rectify the issues that you would experience with the firm ground variation. However, getting an artificial ground football boot is a lot more difficult than it really should be. Like, I'm lucky that in Canada, they have a very good repertoire and kind of level of accessibility to the artificial ground football boots, especially Nike. They do a very good job of keeping their Tiempo, Phantom 6, and Mercurial stocked with artificial ground variants across all their price ranges. But another brand, for example, like Adidas, they don't do a good job at that. And then when you move worldwide, it might be an even bigger issue because a lot of countries worldwide may not have that many artificial ground pitches. So they don't think that they need this football boot. They think that they need more of this one because they have more grass. And as such, finding them is very difficult. Even going in stores, finding artificial ground variants of the Mercurial is a lot more difficult than finding the firm ground variation. So it just makes sense. If you love the Mercurials, you're going to go with this one and not this one, simply on the fact that this one is much more difficult to find. And as such, I think that number one, brands should do a much better job of stocking firm ground or stocking artificial ground football boots so that players who need to play there don't need to turn to those, especially because with this, you can also use this on firm natural grass given how long the studs are. But, if they're going to do that, they need to make a better job of actually stocking those boots. And if you're not going to improve the amount of stock or availability of the boots, then you need to make stud patterns that I guess are more versatile. Like, you can still keep the aggression, of course. I think Adidas does a very good job of this with their Sprint Frame 360 on the F50 Elite because it's still very aggressive. But, you can still be aggressive without, putting so much emphasis on it to where this is borderline unsafe for use on artificial grass. Again, like I said, if you're able to get the artificial ground variation, then I'm really just splitting hairs here. It's not really that big of a deal. But if you aren't, then obviously, yes, this is a con because it lacks versatility. So for my final thoughts on the Vapor 16 Elite, I think that it is an excellent speed boot. It excels in comfort, lockdown, responsiveness, durability, performance. Pretty much any metric you want to put this boot up to is absolutely amazing. And by today's standards, it's able to accommodate a wide variety of different foot types and shapes, such that so many different people can experience the Mercurial experience today compared to, back in the day when it was more niche because the boots were so narrow. Obviously, it does have its issues, as I mentioned. It does have that slight drop off in responsiveness. Grip knit has its issues. And of course, the stud pattern has its issues as well. But again, many of these issues are issues of personal preference. And they are also things that can be rectified by, I guess, doing things to change them. Like, for example, getting the artificial ground variation of the football boot. Or if you don't really care for grip knit, go for the pro variation of the Vapor 16 Elite. Little things like that that really boil down to personal preference at the end of the day. So with that, What are my recommendations? Well, I have a list here. If you want the Vapor 16, then of course go for it. But I'd recommend going for colorways that came out in the 24-25 season, as those will be deeply discounted, starting around 30% and going all the way up to 60-75%, depending on the store or retailer that you actually go to. If you prefer to get the boot with the collar, then go for the Superfly 10, of course. I personally think that this is an unwise financial decision just because the Mercurial Superfly 10 Elite is $35 more expensive just to get the collar. However, if you're able to find it on sale, then why not? Because it's still going to be cheaper than the Vapor on sale, and you'll still get the collar. If you want other nip-based options, just checking my list here, of course, go for the New Balance Furon Elite V8. Then you can also go for the Puma Ultra 6 Ultimate and the, what's it called? Under Armour Shadow Elite 3. Yes, those are all knit options that are all considerably cheaper than the Vapor 16 Elite. I believe Puma Ultra is at $285. The Furon is at $300, and the Under Armour Shadow Elite 3 is at $275, I believe. So all at the very least, $40 cheaper than what you get for the Vapor. If you want something with a textile synthetic option, if you're not a big fan of the grip knit, of course, the Adidas F50 Elite, that's $10 cheaper. If you want, you can go for the Mizuno Alpha 2 Elite or Made in Japan variation. You can consider the Skechers Razor 1.5. That is very similar to this in terms of sole play with the traction. However, you get more of, the traditional Vapor uppers with the Teijin synthetics, thanks to that, I guess, Teijin synthetic forefoot that you get on the Skechers Razor. So that's something to consider. And of course, the Silkito Scudetta, which also has a textile-based upper. And finally, if you're considering grip, let's say you enjoy grip knit, but you want more grip, then I'd consider looking at the Phantom 6 Elite, either in the low or high variations. They honestly feel largely the same as the Vapor 16 Elite, which is really weird to say given that they're a control boot. However, they just have that bit more grip because that's what they're actually designed for. More of the focus is on the grip knit there than, I guess, the entire boot that you get with the Vapor 16. And if you want less grip, then I'd consider looking at the Puma Ultra 6 Ultimate or Carbon. Probably the Ultimate because the Carbon is a full $100 more expensive. But yeah, probably the Ultimate because it has Grip Control Pro, which provides, again, a very subtle waxy feeling on the upper. Not as strong as what you get on Vapor 16, but still a good amount to where you feel like you're getting some sort of grip on the ball when you're trying to dribble, control, or change direction with it. And with all that said, that's it for my review of the Nike Zoom Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite. I think it's a fantastic boot, as I said before, and it's, for me, the boot of the year. There might be a bit of bias there just because I'm a big Mercurial fan, but genuinely, once you've tried these on, you'll be hard-pressed to not enjoy them. Trust me. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe, use the hype button, of course. And of course, stay tuned as I have plenty of other reviews coming, playtests, training sessions, all the like. So much content is coming your way, guys. And we're so close to 1,000 subscribers. So you already know I'm about to ramp things up because I want to get there and keep growing. Stay tuned for more. Take care. Thank you so much for watching.